Welcome to the Harrison Bridge Show. Today, we're diving into a hot topic that's on everyone's mind, smart working. We'll be exploring how you can use it to boost productivity, keep your staff happier, and make your organization the place that everyone wants to work. And I'm thrilled to have the amazing Ruth Gawthorpe with us today. She's the CEO of Smart Working Revolution, and she has over 20 years of experience in transforming workforces. And get this, Ruth and her team have 60 different workforce solutions. Ruth, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lee. It's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, our pleasure. Well, great to have you on the show, Ruth. And last but certainly not least, introducing the MC with the most S, the one and only Kirsty Ames.
Every single introduction just keeps getting better and better, doesn't it? I very much enjoy this. I love it. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm going to be doing this as we go through, guys. If you have any questions for Ruth, you want to stump her, you want to stump Lee, you pop them in the chat and I'll bring them up and get them answered. But I'm very much looking forward to today's show.
Thank you, Kirsty. So, Ruth, it seems like we're in a bit of a tricky spot post-COVID. There's this ongoing tug of war between employers and employees about returning to the office. What's your take on this?
I think the press are bigging it up, Lee, actually. I think that the majority of organisations are quietly continuing with hybrid and remote work. There are some big names that are mandating people back into the office. We saw Boots doing it a few weeks ago. Although I think there was a bit of a backdoor policy in terms of they needed to reduce some staff. And this week we've seen Amazon doing the same. Again, they're talking about reducing managerial staff. And it's generally managerial staff that have become accustomed to, a bit of working from home and they like it. So it may be that it's a bit of a backdoor policy. There. I think in terms of Amazon, we'll wait and see how it pans out. They may see a higher quit rate. They may find that it impacts their move towards AI, for example, because it's often techies that like to do remote work rather than be in the office. They're often introverts and so on, so they're much happier and much more productive. I think what you need to look at from an employee perspective, if you're thinking about doing it, is imagine if you're one of those people at Boots or at Amazon at the moment who are being mandated back into work. Imagine how they're feeling. I would imagine they're feeling distrusted, which is a horrible thing to feel, and worried about the responsibilities that may slide because they've got to go and do the commute again. And if you think about it, up until COVID hit, we all got on the same buses, on the same trains, on the same motorways at the same time, and we went into the same city, and we went into the office, and when we got there, what did we do? We emailed the person next to us, which is bizarre. And if the aliens landed, they'd say, what on earth are you doing? So I think things have moved on. The genie's out of the bottle. Smart leaders will be looking at how they can make hybrid work better for them. So that'd be my thoughts on it, Lee.
Thank you, Ruth. And yeah, we're also seeing most organisations adopting hybrid working, and the research is really compelling, isn't it? Improvements in productivity, performance, employee retention. What about fully remote work, though? Because as a business owner and manager, I benefit a lot from interacting with others and vice versa. And if you're fully remote, you're going to be missing out on some of those kind of interactions and benefits. So I'll be interested in your view on that.
Well, I think if you're fully remote, you've got to have the right technology in place. That's really important. And for some organisations, it works really well, especially if they're working across borders, across different countries, across time zones. you know, we talked about our 60 different options. One of them is baton passing. And so if you, for example, if you take Disney, if they're building a cartoon, they'll do a bit in the UK and then they'll pass it on to the next time zone, and it will come round the time zone in 24 hours. And it's so productive. And you possibly don't need to be in, you know, face to face very often. I say to all of our clients, you know, make sure that you get some interaction, whatever that is that suits you. And it's got to suit your culture and it's got to suit your geography. So there's no one size fits all whatsoever. Some organisations do a cracking job with remote working. Others pare it back a bit and they say remote friendly. And they will tweak their technology so that everybody gets the same sort of experience wherever they happen to be working that day, whether it's in the office, in the hub, or whether they're working from home.
Got it. Okay, so technology and interaction's really important if you are going to go fully remote. So Ruth, can you, in layman's terms, what is smart working and why should organisations be implementing smart working policies?
Yeah, okay. And if I refer to my notes, just so I don't forget anything, just bear with me. But it's a business wisdom. That's the way that I look at it. It makes you look at your business through a 360-degree lens. It's more than just remote working or hybrid working. It's about leaders having the right skill. It's about the team having the right set of skills as well. It's about being deliberate about driving a smart culture. That's really, really important. And it's leader-led. It's also about understanding how the customer experience and the employee experience interact and when it needs to interact. It's about psychological safety so that people feel that they can do their best work. They're not worried about any toxicity or anything like that. Because they happen to not be in the office, it can be quite anxious. So you've got to, if something's going wrong, you know, people will become more anxious and lonely. So you've got to make sure that psychological safety is there as a baseline. And that's a real leadership skill. That's why it's got to be leader-led.
Got it. Okay, I like that. It's being leader-led, it's a business wisdom to look through a 360-degree lens. And it's the skills that the people need to deliver that smart culture.
Yeah, you've got to build two-way trust between your leaders and your team. That's the only way that when you're not in the same office that it can work for you. But if you get it right, it increases. We see increases of 13% on productivity. That's a day a week. Your retention, you know, you're saving money on you're retaining the best people. But also attraction. I can't tell you the difference that it's made in terms of being able to attract a more diverse workforce. So, you know, we can now find a way of helping people with disabilities into roles, carers, parents who are bringing up the next generation have got more chance of having a job with purpose because of this flexibility.
Fantastic. And this is obviously going to vary organisation by organisation and depending on the solution, but how long, you know, does it typically take to implement a workforce solution?
So if you're going to do it properly, you're looking between 6 months and a year, because you've got to also build a culture that runs alongside it. So you can put in some good working options, but you've also got to recognise that when you put in those options, you're actually transforming the culture of your organisation. So there's a transformational change piece behind it. I don't want to frighten people and say, you know, it's going to be really, really difficult. It's not. It's about being deliberate. It's about being planned, being a project management organisation that sees it through and puts all the right elements in at the right time. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a new government and the Labour Party are mooting a 4-day working week. How likely is that to happen, Ruth?
I don't think they're going to mandate that at all. They'd be really silly because a 4-day week just doesn't suit every organisation, and it doesn't suit everybody. If you think about an organisation, retail, for example, that's maybe got lots of part-time workers, part-time people won't necessarily want to do 10 hours a day. They've chosen a part-time role because they want to go and pick the kids up, or they want to go surfing, or whatever. So I don't think that's going to happen. And anyway, there are so many different options. You know, we can utilize things like the 9-day fortnight rather than the 4-day week. There's another option. We like combining different options. So you could combine remote working with the annualized hours contracts. One organisation that's done that with us was Saga, and that worked really well for them. And what it meant was, and this is a key thing with annualized hours, it was the insurance organisation, and they get really, really busy during the winter months with storm damage. So their people would do extra hours during the storm damage months of sort of January, February, March, and then they were getting time off in the summer with the kids because it was annualized. I mean, it's a win-win situation. You know, you're not having to bring in temps to cover. You're also keeping your people happy.
Yeah. Okay. So a 9-day fortnight is perhaps a step that you could move to before maybe doing a 4-day working week. What about with part-time people? Because how does it work then in terms of a 4-day working week or a 9-day fortnight? Is there any
It's difficult, yeah. With part-timers, I'd tread very carefully. I'd look at different ways of, you know, cutting the cookie, to be perfectly honest. There's no one size fits all. If we've got 60 different options, and every time we come up against a challenge, we build in another option into our workforce model, which is just brilliant. Really inspires me when we can find different ways of doing it. So why try to shoehorn all of your people into one way of working? It just won't suit everybody. It may not suit your customer base, may not suit your employee base. So think a little bit more strategically and don't copy.
So it's about being bespoke to your organisation, because your needs and challenges are very different to everyone else's. So don't go copying your competitor down the road, is what you're saying.
That's right, because your culture and your product will be different.
Yeah, okay, good. So what are your top 3 practical tips for implementing smart working, Ruth?
So I think in terms of top tips, the most successful organisations are what I call leader-led. So what does leader-led smart working mean? It means it's quite simple, actually, but sometimes difficult to get to. But leaders paint a picture of the vision they want to see, then they share it, and then they gain feedback. And that helps them to set the shared vision that they want to see for their business. So I always talk about the pilot analogy. When you get on the plane, I'm going off to Greece on Sunday. When you get on the plane, you see the pilot and you know the set of rules that you've got to abide by. And so as a leader, you need to make sure that you've got those principles and those guidelines in place, and that needs that shared vision. Yeah.
Okay, so it's got to come from the top. Leader-led smart working models are the most successful, and you have to share the vision, and then you get the feedback before you do any implementation. Am I right?
Absolutely. You know, speak to your people, ask them how they can make it work best. And that's where I've seen it work really effectively. So we put in place the focus groups and listen to, you know, what people want. And if it's possible, then build it into your vision.
Okay.
It needs that whole 360 that I talked about. It's that, you know, you've got to look at it from all angles.
Okay. And your next tip?
My next tip is that smart leaders drive the right culture to make this smart working stuff successful. And that includes things like trust, collaboration, and also psychological safety. really, really crucial to have levels of psychological safety in place when your workforce are working either hybrid or remote or flexibly. They need that, especially if they're away from the office. Sometimes you can get anxious about whether you're doing the right sort of thing, and so that psychological safety is so key. And all the well-being initiatives in the world won't work unless you've got a level of psychological safety, and that comes from your leaders. It's leader-led again. It's about trust.
Okay.
It's about trust. Yeah.
Okay, good. So that helps with the culture. Psychological safety is absolutely key for this to work.
Yeah.
And your final top tip here?
Train your leaders. A lot of organisations have gone into hybrid working without the investment in their leadership and their managers, and it's a totally different ball game when you're managing people who are working remotely. And actually, I always say remote working teams are far easier to manage than hybrid working teams, because if everybody's working remotely, they're all at the same level. If you've got some people in the office interacting with you and you've got other people working remotely at that time, you can miss out on things like innovation and collaboration unless you're really deliberate about it. So you've got to train your leaders to be able to manage these teams. If you haven't put the investment into managing those teams already, it's likely to fail. And that's what I think is happening with some of these people who are mandating their people back into the office. They haven't got the skills, or maybe they just judge their teams by their own standards. Maybe they get distracted and go and do the washing or watch Richard and Judy or whoever it is these days.
Yeah, and I think that is really common, actually. You'd be surprised from our perspective, doing lots of senior leader recruitment, that actually it's going wrong because so many of the leaders have had zero management training, or they shouldn't be in a leadership role in the first place.
It's a smart leader is a real skill, and you've got to invest your time in those people. It's very much about having meaningful conversations. It's about understanding what makes those people tick, and you sort of need to know that in advance. And that's why some hybrid organisations say when you have a new starter, they want them to come into the office for 2 or 3 weeks or to do their training. It's really important that if they think it's important to do it, because it enables you to build that relationship and understand what a person's values are. What makes them happy, what makes them sad, what responsibilities they've got. It's so crucial, and you miss those cues when you're not in the office. So you get them in place before people go out and work remotely, and then come back together every so often.
Are there any hidden costs to moving to smart working, and what sort of tools and systems would you recommend?
Well, I think that there are things that you can tweak in your technology that will make big differences and give you that level playing field wherever people are working. And you can put a lot of money behind your technology to make sure that it's all singing and dancing. And it's good to think about that if you're moving towards remote friendly or full remote working. I think there's lots of tweaks that you can make without breaking the bank around technology. There will be costs of bringing people back together, but they're sort of offset by the fact that you can reduce your office space. And a lot of organisations that we work with have leases coming up for renewal, and they say, right, Ruth, we want to have a look at this now because we think we can reduce the office space right down. But if you get the right policies in place, it's all about cost saving and better productivity, which is going to make you money. I love it.
I like that. Lee, we have had a couple of comments that I think would be a really good point to bring them in before we move on, if it's okay. So Gavin's mentioned kind of his experience when he joined Cisco. A large part of the workforce walked remote, didn't have the boss as the same country or time zone as you. They invented a lot of the solutions we have today. And as he said, he completely agrees with Ruth. Tech helps, but it's more down to top management wanting it than just tech, which I really like as well. And then Laura also agrees with you and with Gavin. She said the desire from leaders to implement is critical to smart working being a success. Some level of investment in making sure everyone has the skills and knowledge to work that way is also key. So we've got a lot of people agreeing with you, Ruth, which is always excellent, I feel like.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So, well, it all sounds great. What are the pitfalls, though, Ruth? Things that we should avoid?
Yeah. So we've been doing this for more than 20 years, this smart working malarkey. So we've fallen down all the pits. We've had the pitfalls so that you don't have to. So I've put 3 together that I think I want to mention to you. The first one is not outlining to your team the principles of smart working that you expect them to abide by. So it goes back to that pilot analogy. Tell people what they want. You can't have people making it up. And there are certain reasons that you want to have those principles in place, because they will align to your company values and they will be driving the culture that you want to see as well. So definitely the guidelines in place, but involve your people in helping build those guidelines. They know what customers want, and so that all needs to be built into those guidelines as well. That's my first one. Okay. The second pitfall, and I've seen too many companies who are doing this, they fail to understand who needs to collaborate with whom to do their best job. And then they fail to schedule those people to meet up and meet up in person if you possibly can. If not, then utilize some of the amazing technology that there is out there now. But an in-person meeting every so often for collaboration, I think, goes such a long way. If you're trying to innovate, get people together in a room. There's something wonderful about ideas bouncing off one another. So, but you've got to understand who it is that needs to collaborate with who to do the best job before you schedule it. So that would be the other second pitfall. And then the third pitfall, I think, is where you have leaders who fail to build that two-way trust. So you've got top-down leadership skills that are able to build two-way trust, and you've got bottom-up team skills, and that's where the magic happens. That's where you need to get to, and that's why you need investment. So if you're not investing, or if you haven't invested in your hybrid workforce and you've just let it evolve, then who's to blame? You can only blame yourselves.
Yeah, fantastic. So to avoid that, outline the principles of the smart working, collaborate, build trust. And I'd like to add a fourth, if you don't mind me, Ruth.
Ooh, go on.
And I've seen this when organisations have implemented diversity, equity and inclusion plans, is not being leader-led.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting for me. There's a piece of research that's done by Stanford University, University of Nottingham, Bank of England. So it's UK relevant, and it's called the Decision Maker Panel. And they survey 2,000 FDs, not HRDs. It's Percy purse strings they are surveying. And what the FDs are saying is it's going to continue. Smart working, remote working, hybrid working, all the flexible options is going to continue because people are more productive and it's making big cost savings. And there was another piece, I mentioned it to you last week, Lee, which comes from Nick Bloom at Stanford University. And he was saying he'd done some research, and it showed how when a person's working from home, their productivity peaks at lunchtime. And it's because we're eating our food whilst we're doing our job. And what he said was that his laptop repairer said business is brisk because people are dropping food on their laptops. So, you know, these finance directors are right. They can see the benefit, the cost benefit of doing this. And then you've got on the other side, the employees that are happy to not to have to do the commute every day. So it's a no-brainer.
And if you can persuade an FD to do this, then it's got to be right, in my opinion.
Yeah,
No
we've
offense,
done that.
FDs, CFOs, no offense. Can you think of a good case study that of a company that's implemented smart working and what the kind of benefits and outcomes were, Ruth?
Yeah, I can. We did some work recently with a 111 provider. And that was really interesting because we went in to look at their, they've got a lease coming to an end. So we went in to help them to look at how we could introduce remote friendly working, which meant they had a small hub. But actually, when we started talking to that organisation, we recognised that they had other people within their organisation who needed to work face to face. There were some that could work remote friendly, some that needed to be hybrid, and there were also mobile people. So what we did was we talked to them about all of the flexible options that you can give to somebody who's working face to face and or mobile or you know. So you've got those 4 quadrants, is what I'm saying. You can almost implement flexibility and smart working into any shape of organisation, and lots of organisations have people that do need to be face to face, and we must never forget those at all. The remote friendly bit that we did with the 111 organisation was where the contact centre people generally worked remotely. They were the only, I've been told, they were the only 111 provider in this country to hit their winter targets. And do you know why? It was because when colleagues saw that their colleagues were under stress, they jumped back on the phone on sort of extra time, and that's what made them successful. Because they didn't have to get in the car and drive to wherever.
Yes, amazing, powerful, very powerful. Good. Kirsty, can we talk about the next show?
Yes. So in a second, I'm going to do a quick summary of all the stuff that Ruth's given, and we're also going to do a top tip. Whereas if you're interested in smart working, what you should do first. But before then, Lee, we've got a really good show next time. It's about what big corporates want from their energy partner, I believe.
Yes, we've got Guy Bradbury, who's the energy purchasing manager from Imerys, who are a multinational mining company. So he's going to talk about their net zero plan and what big corporates look for from their energy partners. So if your target market is I&C companies, then you need to sign up. It's the 24th of October, same time as usual. And if you want an invite, type energy in the comments.
Oh, I like that. Yes, energy in the comments. I very much enjoy that. It's going to be a great show. I'm looking forward to it. But now I have the rather impressive job of taking all of the knowledge that Ruth has just given us in the last 30 minutes and trying to put it into about 2 minutes. So let's see how I do, Ruth. Here we go. Okay. So when it comes to returning to the office, put yourself in your employee's shoes. Often hybrid working is the better option. If you are going to go fully remote, though, tech is really important, but you do need to make sure that you've got that interaction as a company as a whole, because that's really what's going to help develop those relationships. Now, when we come to asking what smart working is, it's a business wisdom. It's viewing your business from a 360 lens. It's taking into account skill sets. It's being deliberate and intentional. It takes all stakeholders into account. So those who are higher up, those who are lower down, even clients, it's taking all, involving those and getting that two-way trust between every single party involved. It's also a lot around psychological safety. That is really, really important. And the results of it can give you, I loved it when you said a day a week back in productivity, which is such an impressive kind of statistic. It can help you retain and attract the best people and the most diverse people for your workforce, which is, we've done various shows on before and how important that is. and you're kind of from start to finish, you're looking for about 6 months to a year to kind of get an active process involved. But I imagine you tweak it continually as well. Now, we briefly spoke about the 4-day working week, and we think this might be a bit of a, this probably won't get mandated because it doesn't suit everybody and every business doesn't match it. But there are other things that you can do. You can look at a 9-week fortnight. You can look at an annualized hours contract, which I love. If your business has peaks and troughs, it allows you to not worry about motivating your staff when you're in a trough, when there's not a lot of work, and not over, burning them out when it's hot, because they know that they've got that rest coming. So I really love that for some organizations. Now, when we come to practical tips, there's 3 big ones. Leader-led. Make sure the leaders set the vision. They get the feedback from those people who are in the rest of the organization, but they're the ones who set it and they're the ones who tweak it before implementing. I love that. Culture is key, trust, collaboration, psychological safety. All of this stems from the top, and you have to be interested in the person, not just the employee, which I really enjoy. And then finally, you have to develop your leaders. There's been so few people have been trained in management that's not proximity management. So invest in your people, make sure they understand how to manage these systems, because whilst managing remote people is different, it can be easier in some situations. So common pitfalls is to not outline your expectations. You have to make sure that everybody understands what being on the plane is. We're going in this direction, guys. This is how we do it, but this comes from the top. Secondly, be organized. Make sure that every so often you are having those in-person meetings, that there's a social element, I guess, which means you can just kind of bat ideas around, maybe go for a coffee afterwards as well. But understand who needs to be there for those meetings. Make sure that you're not missing people out or inviting people who are kind of just twiddling their thumbs, because I imagine that would be an opposite effect. And then finally, you have to build that 2-way trust. You cannot make promises and kind of say that you're going to do stuff and then not follow through. And that goes through with everybody from leader down to the bottom up. So how did I do, Ruth?
You did really well. You can come on my team.
Yes. Very proud of that. Very proud of that. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so if we want to work on this, sorry, Ruth, if you want to work on this, if I'm talking to you and I'm saying I'm really interested in smart working, I love the idea of it, I can see the potential, what would you say is the first thing or the most important thing to be done?
Shared vision. I go back to that. Get your shared vision. Be creative. Don't follow the crowd. Think about your own unique business. But shared vision is just so crucial. Those that don't have it will fail.
Amazing. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So just a reminder, guys, if you are interested in getting an invite to the next show, put energy in the comments. Even if you're watching a recording of this, I'll make sure that you get that invite. But Lee, I think we've come to the end of the show.
We have. Ruth, if any of our viewers want to get in touch to find out more about you and your services, how should they get in touch?
You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or you can go to our Smart Working Revolution website. Either. There's lots of lovely stories on there that you might like as well.
Some great research on there and blogs. Yeah, I'd agree. So, well, Ruth, thank you for being a fantastic guest on our show. It's been super interesting. You've offered a lot of practical advice on smart working. Kirsty, thank you for emceeing, and thank you to our viewers, and we look forward to seeing you next time.